Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you all to the next edition of our Java with Joe series. This is our morning presentation series with coffee and cookies and everything. So today we are very happy to welcome back Tom Tiefel, who is the Holland Bergen Historian, and he is going to talk about Lieutenant Thomas Dean of the 8th New York Heavy Artillery. Tom lives in his homestead, so he will be able to tell us everything about Mr. Dean, but also his Civil War and post-war career. So,
All right. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for everybody coming today. Super excited to be here. This talk I'm going to give today, there's kind of a two-parter to this. Part of it is my personal journey, 30 years to end up with the acquisition of Thomas Dean's artifacts, stories about his life, and the other part of it is Thomas Dean, who he was, and the contributions he made to not only his community but into the war effort as well. So with that, we'll get into it. Just give you a little bit of prelude to this. I was a 21-year-old kid, born in Gates, New York. Knew nothing about farming. My mother's father was a farmer in Victor, New York. Had no ties to it at all. Decided after high school, I'd always had horses, always. And I said, well, maybe I need to find a place to put my horses. And so that ensued, and I think I looked at about 70 properties later. Realtor sends me to this farm on North Bergen Road, and I pull in there and I said, yeah, this isn't for me. Now I'm lost. I'm out in no man's land. I'm a suburb boy. Got turned around and I said, let me turn in this driveway. Turned in this driveway, all overgrown, was a tractor path, and there's a realtor sign there, laying on the ground. And I said, well, okay. What's going on here, So I took the number down. Next morning I called, and she said, oh yeah, she says, I've had that place listed for about a year. She says, no takers. And I said, well, I'd like to look at it. She says, you would? I says, yeah, I'd love to see it. During the daylight, when I looked at it, it was about dusk. During the daylight, you've got weeds this high. You've got old buildings, really not attractive. I could see why it sat so long. I walked that property, and for some reason, something said, this is it. I have no idea why. Purchased the property. The days that followed that, I just wanted to, meet my neighbors. Said, oh yeah, you bought the Dean property. And I said, okay, what's the, oh, it was a Civil War soldier that was there, and the family that lived there before found some artifacts, and they found a sword in the wall. And I said, oh yeah, and it for some reason it interested me. Go talk to our historian. So I did at that time. I talked to the historian at that time. And she had told me a little bit about it, ran off some copies of what the original house looked like. The original house had burned, was a pile of rubble. And she said, we've got to come to a historical society meeting. 21-year-old kid. I'm like, oh, okay. I get there, and of course I'm a kid in the midst of so many older, wiser people of the town. They tell me these stories about Thomas Dean. Nobody really knew a whole lot about him, just the fact that the family that purchased the property in the 1960s, they found this sword in the wall and stories and battlefield letters and everything else, and I couldn't let go of it. I was like a dog with a bone, and I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. Rolls around, we'll fast forward, that was 1994. 2000, I decided to build my home there. I wanted to build a home much like the one that Thomas Dean had. So I did. Built a basic 2-story colonial, started to dig into it a little bit more, and the home today is decorated very primitive, 1850s, 1860s. During all that time, I'm working my way up through the ranks. It was like I was bit by this history bug. Served on the Historical Society, became president. Eventually, 2012, I was appointed town historian, and just kept meeting dead end after dead end after dead end with this deal. While I was doing renovations to an old chicken coop on the property, there was an enclosed ceiling, and a buddy of mine who was a contractor, he says, if you're gonna make this usable space, the ceiling has to come out. We start to remove the ceiling, it was all tongue and groove. We remove the ceiling, and this bag falls out. And I'm a young kid, I don't, oh, what's in here, and I open up, and immediately I knew they were Civil War artifacts. I just didn't know exactly what I was looking at. What I found was a waist sash, a breastplate, a canteen, and a fork, and it was inside of this bag that seemed like it was coated in rubber. Young kid, didn't really know, ended up discarding the bag. The bag was his tarred haversack that he had carried through the battles. But at least I was wise enough to salvage, save everything else, and I did. And that was it. I mean, that was the only leads I had to go on. We'll fast forward into pre-pandemic. Just before COVID, I get a phone call from a local historian, and everybody that knows me in this role knows my backstory. This whole fabled story about the sword and everything else was why I stuck with this, why I became a historian. It was just very interesting to me. Like I said, I couldn't let it go. And she said, I had a woman in here. She said she lived in North Bergen, and she has a sword that was found in a wall of a home in North Bergen. Well, she immediately had my attention because now it's gone from fable to fact. And gave me her name, and I contacted her, and everything she said checked out. She was the daughter of the family that lived there in the 1960s during the renovation. She had acquired the sword, through her father who had passed, and immediately, it's almost like that scene. It's like Indiana Jones and the Holy Grail. You're like, I've got to meet this lady. I've got to see this sword. She shows up at my office, has a death grip on this thing, and it's all wrapped up in a packaging tube. She lays it out, and I said, "Can I look at it?" She says, "Yeah." I inspected it, and everything that I learned up until that point with Thomas Dean matched. The sword that he would have been issued matched, the date matched, everything matched. I had no reason to believe that it was not his sword. At that point, I said, is there a price tag on it? No. Is there an option for a loan? No. I want to take it back home, and I want to put it back in my closet where it's safe. And it was that scene in Indiana Jones where the grail falls through the cracks. And you've got that voice in your head saying, let it go, So that's that. I thought that was the end of it. And that was during the pandemic. Fast forward to this year. I get a call. And it's the daughter. She said, can we meet again? I said, yeah. So we talked about met at the office, talked about certain things, and she says, I'll be right back. She brought the sword in. And I said, do you need additional information? She says, I want to sell it. And so she says, I have another standing offer in New York City. And I said, well, can I ask what's the interested party in New York City's desire? They just want it for a wall ornament. Okay. She threw a price out there, and I countered, and she didn't want to really budge too much from that. And I met her offer, and I purchased the sword. It was a long journey. What was strange, it was 30 years, almost to the month, that my journey started with this. It was just surreal. And she She then in turn, I purchased it from her, and she turned around and she donated every dime to the Bergen School District, which I thought that was a double win. It was a win-win. At that point, everything that I had hoped for, everything that I this quest for 30 years, that was the final chapter. So that is the story. With that, I had actually was in contact of his third generation granddaughter, who is still very much alive, who is a history buff, professor in Indianapolis, and she had the rest of the pieces of the puzzle. And with that, we'll kind of dive into Thomas Dean. Thomas Dean was born in 1836. His father was Thomas Jefferson Dean, who passed away when Thomas was at a very young age. His mother remarried. She remarried a veteran of the Revolutionary War, Lauren Baker. And Thomas enlisted for a number of reasons when the call came for the war. And one of them I found interesting. I think that this Lauren Baker must have been much older than his mother, because part of it was he wanted to provide for his family, and the other thing was he wanted to fight for the cause, to preserve the Union. And very well educated. Thomas did go through his 8th grade through high school, and I do believe he must have acquired some additional education. Very well spoken. A lot of his letters that I'll read today, his style of writing was very, very good for the time. So I think Thomas was really, for being a farmer, he really had a solid education behind him. So he enlists, we'll go into it. So he enlists in August 22nd, 1862. At that time, he was in Company B of the 129th Volunteers. His regiment was eventually transferred to the 8th New York Heavy Artillery. Interesting about his regiment, they had initially been assigned to Fort McHenry for the first 2 years of the war. And Fort McHenry, they did a lot of dealing with prisoners and just daily duties. Really was a very cush assignment for these guys. So much so that when General Grant needed additional forces, they were thrown into the conflict, the actual conflict. They weren't well received. A lot of them had, a lot of other seasoned military troops and personnel really looked down on his regiment, because they said, well, you guys had it easy for 2 years. Yeah, things kind of really were an eye-opener for his regiment. Their first battle was Battle of the Wilderness, which, if a lot of you are familiar with that, very, very violent battle. They cut their teeth really, really quick. They learned really, really fast as far as what they were up against. After the Wilderness, they had Cold Harbor. Or I'm sorry, no, it was not the Wilderness. It was Cold Harbor, not the Wilderness. Cold Harbor was the battle. After that was the Siege of Petersburg, and I'm going to go into his account at Petersburg. One of his first letters that he wrote just kind of gives you an idea. So we're Sunday, June 5th, 1864. He was at Gaines Farm. Dear friends, I take pencil in hand once more to write a few lines to inform you that I'm yet this side of the grave, enjoying good health, but my spirits, I can't say, are very good. I don't know how I ever experienced a more solemn time in my life for 2 days, the duration that I have. Our regiment went into fight Friday the 3rd of June, early morning, at daybreak with good spirits and hopes of success, but we marched back from the charge to where we started from behind our breastworks with 670 less than when we started, and killed or wounded or missing. Among the casualties, a regiment of 41 was Company I will send a list of the names. I'm sorry that among them badly wounded was Bert Fuller. Bert Fuller lived in Bergen. Just through the different correspondence, I think him and Bert Fuller were very good friends. Captain Gardner was killed. Dead, Lieutenant Cook. Lieutenant Cook was, actually, it was the Cook farm that's on Cook Road, backs up to the Dean farm. It is still owned by descendants of Marshall Cook. Marshall Cook and Thomas were very good friends. And so Marshall Cook sustained a wound to the head that they thought was going to be fatal, but wasn't. And wounded in the head dangerously. I don't know how many there were killed or missing. We have only found one killed, but we're well satisfied that the rest of the missing are killed. They may be at General Hospital, and if they're taken there, they don't take none of those badly wounded. Colonel P.A. Porter was killed in front of his colors while forward to make the charge. We had to cross a large field, 100 rods across the front of the rebel batteries with grape and canister shot pouring onto us, cutting us down like grass with a scythe. The Rebs were stronger fortified than we expected. I have not time to give full particulars of late, but I will soon. Give my respects to all, right soon as you can. Direct to the 2nd Army Corps, 8th New York Artillery, it will come to strength through. I expect we shall get some of our mail tomorrow. I've not heard from home since James Templeton wrote, and it was lucky streak that I got that. One of the boys that was left behind brought it. Major Willett was wounded quite bad. Colonel Bates was slightly. I spoke a grieving list of names killed, wounded, and missing. The mailman is here, and I must close. Give my particulars next time. Love to all from TJD. P.S. Gillis is safe. Did not get a scratch. William Osborne is also safe. A couple days after the letter, Dean had a chance to gather his thoughts, and he was able to write a more detailed letter, which now we know is the company's regiment's casualties. As an officer in Company I, he was responsible for updating the morning books. Large sheets enlisted who were present, not for duty on a daily basis. He had to search through the piles of the dead, inquire of the other eyewitnesses. Many names would have been struck from the list. June 7th, 1864, Gaines Farm. Dear friends, I take pencil in hand to inform you that I'm well and hope that a few lines that you will find the same. While sitting here in the missiles of death grow whistling over the breastworks, keeping us closely confined to them. There are balls flying from sharpshooters. They occasionally hit persons that carelessly get from the cover in the breastworks. One of our boys got a bullet through the thigh within a rod of cover. Since the battle or charge, I did not send you the list of casualties to our company. I will do this and the names alphabetically as follows of the killed, first wounded, and missing. He has a list here of probably 30 to 40 soldiers from Leroy, Byron, Bergen, and there's a whole list. And he goes on to say, I've written these lines in great haste in order to go over the 94 to Feds Regiment. They lay low now, 2 miles from here to where they are. I saw a Feds orderly sergeant. I am with him over where the boys are. Some of our boys saw Fred, so he mentions Fred again, and Thomas. I'm not sure who Thomas was, close of yesterday. Frank saw them. Bert Fuller is getting along tip-top. The boys say they saw him yesterday. He's been sent to the rear and will probably go home as soon as his wounds get better. He was wounded in 3 places. I've not seen him since he was wounded. His wounds are flesh, I guess, but when I can learn that no bones are broken. I'll learn that as much as I can about him and write his folks, as I anxiously suppose they will learn all they can. Give my best wishes to all we expect, the big fight on the ground we now occupy. Lots of troops are coming in daily. Fights are constantly occurring through the line, but no engagement has yet taken place. From the soldier boy. So he starts to refer himself as the soldier boy, and it's from the third generation granddaughter. She says that was they started to correspond back and forth, and we call him that. T.J. Dean, by the way, Colonel Porter was killed and Major Willett was wounded. You can see the casualties in the papers of the regiment, the losses and the kills and wounded, missing something near 670. I'll mention that in another letter. So after that, this is when things start to really heat up a little bit. So he has, he talks about, let's see, week after a disastrous battle reported on their changed position, he also hoped to dispel false comments of the regiment. So something transpired where they had said that the 8th New York, his regiment acted cowardly in this battle, and it was a rumor that got started, and it really did not sit well with Thomas, and he does mention it. So near the Chickahominy River, further advances a little nearer, Rebs nearer them to talk. I seat myself to write you a few lines. It's the 10th day of June, 1864. Dear friends, I have nothing particular to write about, only that I'm well and hope that you are. We've had no fighting since I last wrote, but I don't know how soon we may. I need a letter yesterday from Asneth, dated June 2nd. Was glad to hear you were all well. I haven't heard from Berg today, but expect to tonight. I take by what Asneth wrote, and there is a strange report occurring in our company and myself. It's not the least shadow of truth in the report. I have been in every fight that our company has been in for a regiment. I stood up to it, and I'm not ashamed. The person who reported such a yarn is a coward and a liar. Our company never broke and ran from the enemy, but always towards them. I never lay under the fence, nor did nothing of the company that not of a time to fight. Such reports don't go down. If a man was in camp that reported that yarn, he would not live 1 second. His body would be filled with bullets. The boys are so enraged about it. I expect to get another letter today. The report is quite a quantity of mail lays down in the ambulance train, and we'll get it this afternoon. I can't think of anything more to write about. I don't see why I should be detained. I think of friends at home and could get the mail, they would be better satisfied. Thomas says he must go back to think his regiment are going to move this afternoon. No casualties since I wrote last. Our post office is a small shelter tent. I did not want you to think or get it in your head that we had a large building. I must close at this time. Give my love to all inquiring friends from Thomas Dean. So after this battle, they're regrouping. They're getting ready to go on to Petersburg. It says till the 12th, stale would remain. Each would take advantage of the other about sunset every night to push their respective skirmish lines. The 8th New York left the vicinity at Dean's farm on the evening of the 13th, 2nd Corps. According to Dean, in another letter to his mother, dated June 15th, they marched all night until 7 a.m. on the 14th. The regiment rested for a short while near Charles City, but was delayed 4 more hours while the military train passed. Dean's report was also corroborated by Adjutant John Cooper's report in the Batavia paper on the 13th, which gave some more details of the tedious march, and we summed up his experience for the men. So, it says, we moved last night at 7 o'clock, marched through the night, through the woods and swamps. I've just crossed the famous Chickahominy River. It's dirty, muddy stream, not over 60 feet wide where we crossed, but quite deep. It's now 12 o'clock noon, and we're resting for a few moments until artillery gets across. About an hour ago, General Grant and staff passed along. I saw Captain Eli Parker, who many of you know and have exhibits here. General Grant's staff, he looked remarkably well and made inquiries about some of his friends in Batavia. He considered here an able officer. It's now 8 o'clock p.m., and we have at last halted for the night. It's been most severe march for the men. Over 24 hours with sleep or rest, without sleep or rest, not even having the time to cook coffee is terrible for the men. The veteran soldiers of this army say it was never known such marching and digging and fighting has been done since opening of the campaign, 3rd of May. It has been either march, dig, fight all the time. So this kind of starts to give you the idea that here his regiment, they went from Fort McHenry, that was like a country club compared to what they're going through now. Definitely an eye-opener for him. It said, he goes on to say, he writes again, so June 15th, near Wilcox Landing at south side of James River. Dear friends, since I wrote the last letter, we've done some marching. We started from near Gaines Farm the eve of the 13th and marched all night until 7 o'clock a.m. of the 14th. We halted about 4 hours in the train to pass, and we started marching all day and night until about 11 o'clock p.m. We laid down for the night and got into a drowse, and up we got to change position by the right flank, which took about 1 hour before we get into position. Then we laid down and had a tip-top sleep. The ground was our bed, and the stars of heaven covering, but we slept as well through we laid in on geese feathers. I know I did not wake up until just before daylight. This was about 2 miles from the river, near a place called Chaz City. We laid in place yesterday nearly all day until about 3 o'clock p.m. Then we started into the river 2 miles distant. We then, after getting into Wilcox Landing, laid around until the head of the column got across in boats. We took our turn. As it came about 10 o'clock p.m., we were on the south side. We marched about 1 mile and stopped, laid down for the first long enough to get sleep, and then we were routed up, marched 2 miles into Big Pine Forest, where I'm now writing. It's about 5 o'clock in the morning on the 15th. How long we shall stop at this place, I'm not able to say. We expect marching orders every minute. We shall probably march until we come in contact with the Rebs in the direction of Richmond. This last move of ours is calculated in a big thing. We have made flank the enemy. I expect to soon see a hot time. Grant is bound to take Richmond this time as near as I can calculate. Let it cost what it will. I don't undertake to tell where we're bound up for a stopping place. I stand, the march is tip-top. I feel as well common that we don't lose too much flesh. I have been my great phase, head of Company I, every rod, every ground they've traveled since we started, from the ball 1 ago to today. We haven't had any casualties to record since I started and I last wrote. Was odd, he didn't sign it. He signed everyone, and this was one of the few that he didn't. And so he talks about, he goes on and there's additional letters here, but so I'll come back to that, and then we'll jump into June 23rd, directly south of Petersburg. So they're within shot of about 4 miles behind the breastworks. Might be a skirmish all day. Dear mother and all friends, whom this may interest, I just had the pleasure of reading a letter from you dated June 17. Our company lost and wounded yesterday, but hope 7 more, but I think not. They have not all come in yet. We can't tell precisely. The rebels are changing their position in front of us. They came to appear missing, and their troops for a charge on our breastworks. Colonel Bates was wounded last night, besides a number of other officers killed and wounded, but I am well. William Osborne Gillis and all from our parts are yet alive and well. I lead the company into charge last night. Our men have been marched, so their spirits are very low. They're nearly jaded, but we executed with the intention where we started. We took the works. Petersburg is not taken yet. We've got our troops nearly all around it. We've cut nearly all the railroads leading into Richmond. It is our business at this point. We cut 2 roads yesterday. I'll write more when I get rested, give my wishes to all. I need a letter from Bert stating that he was getting, I read a letter from Bert saying he was getting along finely. From the soldier boy, Thomas Dean. Now you can start to see where the siege is starting to begin, and the fact that he led, all their officers are killed or wounded, and he starts to become a leader. And it goes on from there. So he's now First Sergeant Thomas Dean, Company I, 8th New York, June 18th and 19th, near Petersburg. I neglected sending this letter because I could not. It's not a good reason. Well, dear friends, I have not the time to write as we expected to go into battle at every moment. I've had a sharp fight last night and the night before. Our company had 2 killed and 10 wounded. I was in the hottest of it. We drove the Rebs like fun. I did not get hurt. I am well. We expect to take Petersburg this afternoon. Our boys are driving the Rebs like fun. They're on a regular stampede. Our men are after them. We are driving them from the railroad. Since I wrote above, we have been in another fight. Company I had 4 wounded, making this 2 fights in the last night and the night before, 18 killed and wounded. The above was written yesterday on the 18th. This morning, we lay behind the Rebs' breastworks where we captured 3,000 prisoners yesterday morning. The same we fought with yesterday, the day recorded the one general fight in the days of the war. I can't begin to tell you the half of it. We're on the trot nearly all the time. The boys are getting nearly worn out, and I have got Petersburg Railroad, and we are now getting ready to destroy it. I expect we nearly see a hot time today. The rebels have got earthworks thrown up thick. I am well, though. I will write more soon. Give my best wishes to all. My name was sent to the adjunct generals for promotion 1 week ago today. I am to be lieutenant. Nearly the whole responsibilities of Company I rests on me. We now have 1 officer present on duty, and he's not very well. Loomis is also sick. Lieutenant Cook is at home wounded. Stafford and myself run the company, and please don't let anyone out of the family see or read this letter. Excuse the haste, June 19th, Thomas Dean. So things are starting to, you can kind of see that during the fighting, that you're starting to have a breakdown in command, so that's where Thomas starts to be considered for the position. June 25th, 1864, in a field at Petersburg. Dear friends, I seat myself again to inform you that I'm on this side of the grave. Since I wrote the last time, we've moved off into the left wing of the army. We're now about 4 miles south of Petersburg, holding a very important position from the Rebs on the railroad. Our regiment was in a fight, 22nd, and our loss was very small. Only 6 wounded in the company and 130 lost in the entire regiment. Our loss was the lightest of any engagement in proportion in any other companies owing to the position that we were in on the advance. Our company happened to be behind the crest of a hill where there's more rise than some of the others. All the company officers are gone, and I'm left in command of the company. I have led the company now some 3 or 4 days. Stafford, Loomis, and Gillis are in the hospital very sick. None of them are dangerous, but quite badly worn out, but refuse to stay down. Although they have no strength, all are nearly whipped. Our company is reduced down to 54 men at present, and 11 of them are not able to march. Our hospital is so full they can't get in anymore. There's not seems to be much care without one who is badly wounded. They get served at first as should be. We haven't had any rain since the night of the 3rd, and the weather's been very hot and dry at times, and some nights are quite cold. Quite a good deal of difference in the climate here and at home. The boys are mostly troubled with diarrhea caused by a good deal by drinking swamp water and eating unregular on our marches. The dust is very bad yesterday while on the march. It beat anything I ever saw. I could not see 2 rods ahead at times. Sometimes it was so thick, it fairly blinded me. We were on the present time where it's very not quiet and very much firing going on. It seems somewhat like the Sabbath at time of old. I expect there to be something brewing. There is always a calm before the storm as well as after. I have not received a letter from Chaz Reed, who was going to write. So Thomas Dean married Celestia Reed. So he was, which was a prominent family that was, they originated out of Cooperstown, New York, and they migrated down into Bergen. So he was tied into the Reed family. And he says, I saw Fred Hibson yesterday. He was all right. They haven't been into many fights as we have. No casualties in our company since the hospital, or since the 22nd, as I started before. I read a letter from Bert. He's getting along finely. He's in the hospital with Sarzunning, where he gets the best of care. We had good night's rest last night for the first time in quite some time. William Osborne's doing all right. We did not get any mail yesterday. Expect to today. I hope I shall get one from North Bergen, though I have no reason to complain. I hear quite often from you. A paper boy just rode through the camp. I got a paper dated the 23rd. There appears to be another general movement in the Army in the vicinity, and I don't know what that means. Things move in a mysterious manner. We don't know by the hour where we'll be next. Give my best wishes to all. I remain as your ever the soldier boy, friend to all, Thomas Dean. June 28th. All is well, no casualties. Our Company C and Company A are on picket now. I'm seated on my knapsack at a picket line in the woods not far from where I commenced this letter yesterday. All is quiet. There's been no firing at all. It's the most pleasant place I found for quite some time. Quite cool. It rained very little last eve, making the air quite refreshing. I haven't seen a drop fall since before Bert Fuller was wounded the night of the 3rd. At least I don't remember. I've been in command of the company for some time past, and I get my appointment, which I expect to be soon. It will date back to the time where I've acted as lieutenant, which has been nearly 3 weeks. Captain Baker received his appointment, but a short time since major. His name was sent in, but 2 or 3 days before mine. I shall look every day for a reply and application he made for me 2 weeks ago last Sabbath. The mail went out from our regiment headquarters. I don't think anything more to write at this time. I'm obliged to you for the last letter and the contents. I hope Bert will get well. Oh, how I would like to see my wounded boys, but also I can barely wish, but alas, I can wish them good success. Write in your next letter how many letters you've received from me since I left Belle Plaine, including to all of our family. I don't think they've all gone through. I give my best wishes to all. I close from the soldier boy. With that, I will say, Thomas wrote 118 letters, which that was crazy. And the one thing is you're hearing these, the one thing that I noticed a lot is he puts you there. He describes things and he goes into great detail, and you can almost imagine as you're reading this how it looks. July 1st, Sergeant T.J. Dean, in the fields of South Petersburg, Virginia. Dear friends, I seat myself once again with pen and ink to scribe a few lines to you. I'm sitting on the ground under a large oak tree, writing on the head of William Osborne's drum. I think it's the best place as I've had since I left Ball. We came into these lines of works yesterday. We're in front of the line of the Rebs. They're not very close, about 2.5 miles off. Yesterday was muster day. Rather slim muster for the 8th. Company I had present 54 men. I'm in command of the company yet. All the officers are absent. I'm feeling quite like myself today. I think 2 or 3 more days will bring me all right. There hasn't been any casualties since I last wrote, and I think the worst and the hardest day of our fighting is over for a spell. Keep up good courage. Don't worry about me, for it will do you no good. You must consider where I am and let it go at that. There is no help, only in the sword. We must whip them out or get whipped. I don't know where to stop writing, and I don't know what to write anything that amounts to much. I don't think we shall get our pay until this campaign's over, and with that we settle down someplace where we sure of stopping overnight. The weather has been somewhat cooler for the past 2 days. We'll be threatened with a shower, but it did not make out to really much rain. It's very dry most of the month since it rained. Will be 2 days more. I don't want you to send any more paper and stamps. I was lucky enough to get that supply the other day. I got 25 stamps, the same amount of paper and envelopes. William Osborne is hunting graybacks off his pants and shirt now. We soldiers have to hunt them regularly every day. Our moving around so much and laying behind the breastworks where other troops are almost impossible for us to keep ourselves clean. We have to lay down where they stop us in rank. It doesn't matter where it is, we have to stop for the night. We fix up a little, but a great many times we're so fatigued and worn out, we just drop where we are. I don't really want to write any more at this time. Accept my best wishes to all from Soldier Boy. It kind of makes me laugh because he's like, well, I'll write a few lines and it's like a book later that he writes. He says, P.S. Heavy can distinctly be heard in the direction of Petersburg. I think they're pounding away at that bridge, so they tell us so much on papers. I will write more soon. I can't give much of an account of what's going on. Everything works blind in regard to the general involvements in the shifts. Sometimes I don't think there's anybody that knows, only Grant, and he gets confused sometimes, but he's all right on the goose question. So whatever that must have been some kind of an inside joke. So 4th of July, 1864, in the field of Petersburg. Dear friends at home, since I wrote, there's not been any casualties in our regiment. We have been laying still for days, and the boys are feeling good and a good deal better. They're getting rested up again. I'm feeling like myself again. We need rest for a few days longer, and we'll be able to do as much as ever. I have nothing new to write about. I only write because I think you'd be glad to hear from us if we don't write anything more than merely we're all whatever it is and the facts may be from your soldier boy. So 4th of July, he actually did receive his promotion to lieutenant. So July 9th, Lieutenant Thomas Dean, in the field near Petersburg. Dear friends, I take pen in hand to inform you that I'm well and enjoying life as well as could be expected from a soldier in front of the enemy. We're here yet, last I wrote. We're traveling quite a rest. Nothing new, worthy of note. Only the night before the Rebs made an attack on Burnside's men and a little to our right and got whipped. The Rebs got piled up like cutting grass. A few Rebs even found themselves on the end of my new pig sticker. Our men opened up on them with crossfire and grape canister. Not much on our side. We took a lot of prisoners. Our boys like to have the Rebs charge them. We always whip them like fun. The soldier boy, Lieutenant Thomas Dean. P.S. Weather's very dry. No rain since the 3rd of June. But I don't even have enough time to lay out in the dust. July 14th, 1864, in the field near Petersburg. Dear friends, I'm permitted once again to write a few lines. Hopefully they'll find me enjoying good health and good spirits. We've moved several times since I last wrote, but not in good ways. We have not been in any fights since we have met with no casualties. I heard yesterday that for the first time, Bert Fuller died by way of Lieutenant Loomis. He came back yesterday from City Point. He is now quite smart. I hope that he'll be able to keep the company, as it will be much easier for me. Gillis is in a hospital, getting along finely. I think I'll get to a leave of absence soon and go home. They usually give them 20, sometimes 30 days. I would like to see you, but when I do, I wish I could be enjoying it in good health. The weather continues to be very dry, with a very slight shower the night before, that we had seen aspects. At 9 o'clock the next morning, the dust flew up just as bad as before. William Osborne went to the hospital into an ambulance wagon yesterday. He's quite unwell, but not dangerous. We started for quite a long march. An order was counter-commanded. I think we'll start for City Point soon. That was where we were ordered to go yesterday. Some 10 or 12 miles from here. I just expect we'll soon be able to get to be ordered every minute, and we're now on picketing duty. Quite change is taking place in the 2nd Corps. I don't think it will change much, but only for the worse. I never did like the brigade we were in. We can't tell where we'll be in an hour from now. Soldier's life is very curious, one especially in the field. We can march at any time and go on and then not go far and meet the Rebs. I don't know if I can send a letter up till change is made. I'll write soon, and after I will let you know about it. Perhaps we'll go to City Point, perhaps into a fight. There's no knowing, perhaps nothing. The boys are now with the company and all is well. I suppose the Rebs got quite numerous around in the Western Virginia and Maryland. I understand that people of Ball wishes the old English back in there and doing all they can do in Washington until after the campaign is over around Richmond, and it may be until the snow flies. There's no knowing what a few days will bring forth. I must close for this time, except for my best wishes from the soldier boy, Thomas Dean. And the last letter that we have that's been transcribed, August 10th, 1864, in the field of Petersburg. Dear mother and friends all, I take time to answer you much welcome letter of the 3rd. I wrote you a letter as soon as he got back from James River expedition and Petersburg bombardment and wrote of the particulars with regard to our company and regiment. We did not lose a man, but exposed to considerable fire. We were on the reserve, but not all called on to expect at every moment. All day we lay here, we could see the whole bombarding of Petersburg. Never before did I see such a sight. The air was full of iron and lead, one perfect roar of artillery and musketry. Both sides were engaged in the biggest battle that they knew how. Only one division of our corps was in the fight. It was the 3rd. I don't know how to witness any other such a sight. No fireworks that I ever saw can begin to cope with the splendor of the bursting shells in the air. But that won't even tell the whole story. The earth, with 1,000 of dead and wounded, told the horror of the occasion. We did not make much of it. Proved to be a failure caused by the neglect of some generals in mismanaging of the troops properly. An investigation committee is now in session to ferret out the matter. Hancock is present. They appear to think that the fault is with Burnside. I could write all day on the subject, but it would be no avail to you to get to understand, and you'll get all of this in the newspapers. Cook has not got here yet, but expected from him every day. I have not been mustered yet on his account of not being here. From the soldier boy Thomas Dean. Don't let this letter get out for mercy's sake. Excuse the haste. So that was at that point. I don't think that I don't think the 8th New York had anything to prove to anyone. They saw the worst of it. And Thomas, during that time, he went on to. He had also received a shrapnel wound to his shoulder. He never got his furlough home because between the siege of Petersburg lasted for over 200 days, and he was in a hospital in Washington from his shrapnel wound later in 1864, and he was returned to the front lines. So they were really pushing forward. Getting near the end of the war, siege of Petersburg was huge. Fall of Richmond, they were there for it all. He also had a bout with dysentery, and he nearly died from dysentery, but managed to get over it. So with that, at the close of the war, he was mustered out in 1865. He comes home. He goes back to farming, and just as I had said, things come full circle after 30 years. I just acquired this ledger that belonged to Thomas Dean, and his third generation granddaughter was up here, and she's, I have all these items, and I just kind of flipped it through it, and something really caught me off guard. I called her and I said, what is this? And she says, that's his ledger. He had a side business. And I said, I thought he was a blacksmith. She says, no, that was his father. Turns out that Thomas was, when he got home, he really just got to it. He opened up like a general store on the farm for locals to come, and he sold anything from sugar to nails to hammers to all sorts of things. So he really was an entrepreneur. He ended up passing away Christmas Day in 1903, and he is buried up in the Mount Rest Cemetery up in Bergen, and really just lived a long life, fathered 3 children, and he very active in his community post-war, but I do believe that he really must have, just judging by the letters, he must have really, if he didn't have PTSD from this, it would have been amazing. He really just endured, just went on and was successful in the community. And his son, Kelvin Dean, went on to have he took over the family farm and kept it a success. Today, I own the farm, and their two main crops, if you will, during the turn of the century, it's still farmed. We're still producing hay. His son Kelvin went on to have a very successful maple syrup business, and that's there today too, and we're making maple syrup again, and hopefully on carrying on, Thomas's legacy. I'm really big on preservation, especially with the Dean Farm, and all of the land has been untouched. Just this past May, I did a land merger where there were two parcels that Thomas had originally had, and I did a land merger, so the farm is actually one again. So Thomas's legacy and his family has been preserved. So with that, that's what I have. So any questions?
The one little part in that letter, you said it was chasing graybacks. You're talking about lice.
Yes.
We're not talking about
Correct.
Confederates.
Yes, and that's one of the great things. I love reading his letters because, like I said, it puts you there. It's little details that he gives. It's just, I don't know if he had, with the siege. I mean, it sounds like they did have it's almost like they had a lot of downtime, but when things got hot, they got real hot, real quick. So he had seen a lot in the times he was there. Any other questions?
Do we know with the issuance of the sword back in Civil War time, was that presented only to officers, or did enlisted men have swords as well?
So that's an NCO, that's a non-commissioned officer sword.
Okay.
So he would have been issued that during his commission, so he would have gotten the rank of lieutenant at that time, and he would have been issued. They weren't. You had officers that went in as officers. There's a lot of examples of swords I've seen were a little bit more elaborate, but his is just a basic NCO.
Different shape too.
100%. Yes.
Different.
100%. You can spot it. Yep.
Pointy.
Yep. You can spot an NCO a mile away. Yep. Yep.
Also, there's differences between the officers and the
Oh yeah. They vastly. So yeah. Yes.
Were those differences cosmetic, or did they serve different purposes?
A lot of them were cosmetic. I mean, cavalry swords were different. The cavalry sword had the sweep to it, and they were heavier, longer. A lot of the battles that I've read. I mean, a lot of these. Yes, they used them for. He would have mainly they pointed him into the direction of the enemy.
Right.
That was their primary. That way, it's the charge, the classic charge.
Also, the sword is the symbol of authority.
Yes. Yeah. One thing that I did notice in the photo, the photo, Thomas, his waist sash, he's wearing it like a bandolier. He's wearing like a sash, he's got it. A lot of the officers wrapped it around their waist, and they'd have it hanging to the side.
Well, that was to help hold the weight of the sword on that one side.
Yeah. Well, yes. And he also had the rigging as well. But yeah, it was unique. It was something that a lot of pictures I had seen.
As an NCO or as an officer, he would also have a pistol.
Yes.
They would have been on the other side.
And we don't know where that went. It was funny because he had, the family also had with that, and I failed to mention earlier, they also did find a musket in the wall as well at the time. And I don't know if he sent that home ahead of time. I don't know, but it was supposedly his issued musket.
Do you have it?
From when he was.
Do you have the musket?
I do not. The other sibling has the musket, and it was unwilling to do anything with it. So I fear it's probably lost forever at this point.
The canteen is probably something he collected.
Yeah.
Because it's either Spanish-American War,
Yeah.
some of the 1870s, 1880s.
Yeah. It is. It is.
Civil War.
It is later, but it was.
Something
And a lot of these guys too. So there's another sword in existence, and the third generation granddaughter has a sword that he had. It's dated 1864, but it's a cavalry sword. And so, saber. So where did that come from?
Correct.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things there's a lot of different things, and he was involved in the GAR, you know, and they could have picked up a lot of, you know, did a lot of trading back and forth, oh, I want that, or I want this, and, you know, we have no idea, the Sabre is Ames, it's dated 1864, but there's no, you know, no ties to it.
My great-great-grandfather was in the company H,
Okay,
and he was also wounded in Petersburg.
a lot of casualties there. Yeah, a lot of casualties, and it was definitely, in all the reports that I read, it was a mess. It was definitely a lot of error in that battle. But yeah, what amazes me most, just reading through the letters, is he was within a few feet of General Grant. And he talked to Eli Parker, and and it was just really, really neat. You know, it was just a really, just a little neat footnote in his letters that, he talked to these people. And really just kind of, today we look at it from a history aspect. At the time, these guys, they just had a job to do. They didn't think what they were doing was gonna be forever, They just wanted the war to end. So, any other questions? Well, thank you.